All right, everyone. In the spirit of Thanksgiving, the Biden White House has decided to release some propaganda. So we will be debunking it, of course, with great glee. And happy Thanksgiving to people. We will be doing a Thanksgiving feast later. You can't get a turkey in this country. Of course, I'm currently in the Netherlands because turkeys don't really exist here. Although you can get shredded turkey, like, the shitty kind you put on sandwiches. Not sure why they don't have a few whole turkeys. I guess there's a shortage of them in the United States right now, and they're high-priced. Anyway, whatever. We will be having a bit of a feast. Couldn't find cranberries. They're not for sale yet in the stores, so I have to use rudbesen. Yes, it's red currant. You can make a similar sauce with them. It's basically made the same way. Anyway, since I am that weird uncle, potentially, I suppose I probably qualify for the role. Here's a post by the Biden White House. One last item for your Thanksgiving dinner. Some talking points when that uncle comes at you about POTUS. Yes, the weird uncle clearly is the Republican one. No, more often they're going to be the weird liberal who has the NPR mug and can't stop smoking marijuana or dropping acid thinking it's still 1975. But anyway, we'll look at President Biden's top accomplishments. Chatting with your uncle at Thanksgiving. And this was, I guess, literally released by the White House, just to be clear. And I thought it wasn't Thanksgiving anymore. I thought it was, Indigenous Person Genocide Day or something like that. But apparently they decided not to go that woke. They wanted more people to circulate this without cringing. Tackling inflation and lowering costs. Gas prices are down by $1.35 a gallon since June, and inflation is moderating. False. Gas prices are still about $1 a gallon higher than when Biden took office. This is this is called limiting the data that you're looking at. Yeah, the gas prices are down from their literal all-time high. It's too bad that they're still high. And when they hit this particular price before the last summer, it was conceived of as being almost demonically terrible because it was at that point a near all-time high already. As far as inflation, it is not moderating. It is linear. Because you compare year-over-year inflation, not month-over-month. The fact that the number drops month-to-month means nothing if in the prior year over the same period it had been rising. That means linear inflation. Okay, it's moderating in the sense that inflation is not getting catastrophically worse. It is still catastrophically bad. It's just not more bad. That's the only difference. By the way, you do have warning signs of a worldwide recession impending for the next year. Although we already had a mini recession. We had a foreshock session, I suppose, but we'll get past it. Unsnarling supply chains to lower the cost of goods. That was primarily the result of gubernatorial action. Much like the lockdown damage was, Biden is not singularly responsible for the lockdown-related economic catastrophe we're suffering. His culpability wasn't in the legal sense, it was only in the encouraging it to happen sense. Governors were the ones that did that, especially in California. You have a bunch of world-class shipping ports. They were effectively throttled. A bunch of people walked off the job due to jab-related concerns, and you had shortages. And you still have supply chain issues. They're just not as bad as before. They shouldn't even have existed in the first place. Saving Americans with hearing loss up to $3,000 on hearing aids. That's lovely. It's not something that you're paying for. The taxpayers are subsidizing that involuntarily. You can think that's a good idea, but I don't think that that's the weird uncle at the table says, Joe Biden sucks. And then the other weird uncle, the one with the sweater and the NPR mug who's begging you to turn down the thermostat to save the tree frogs, is like, well, he saved $3,000 on hearing aids for poor Americans. Yeah, that talking point, that's got a lot of leverage right there. Some of this is pretty funny. Tackling junk fees that cost Americans billions, like surprise overdraft charges. Long overdue. Okay, you can call that an accomplishment, but imagine using that as leverage at the kitchen table during your inevitable political debate over the sweet potatoes. Took on Big Pharma and won. Lowering prescription drug and healthcare costs. False. It does cap insulin. That's something that is good. It caps out-of-pocket prescription costs. The problem is that because of the law of supply and demand, unless you're shoveling huge amounts of taxpayer money, that means your money, by the way, into those companies to cover the differential, which is a hidden tax on the entire population, you're forcing them to shift to get profit in something that's less regulated. So they're like, shit, We have to sell our insulin for less. We're making less money. We're going to up the cost marginally on all drugs other than insulin because they're not covered. This is exactly what the companies are doing. They're going to break even. The cost will be passed to the consumer either by the company or in the form of more inflation and taxes. That's just the long and short of it. Capping annual out-of-pocket prescription drug costs, capping insulin co-pays, again, we covered that. Lowering health insurance premiums by $800 annually for Americans who buy insurance through the Affordable Care Act. Again, another vote-buying grift that is taxpayer funded. The ACA is partially funded in tax form anyway. Trump, by the way, got rid of that mandate, which should have killed it in the courts, but it didn't go before SCOTUS. It got locked in the Fifth Circuit, I believe, if I remember correctly, and then SCOTUS basically issued a stay and called it a day. Worked with Republicans. Oh, yeah, again, you're the liberal at the table. You're going to be very proud that Biden had a good conversation with Mitt Romney. To rebuild America's infrastructure, rebuilding roads and bridges, investing in passenger rail and public transit. Passenger rail is a dead issue in the United States. We are not Europe, just to be clear. Expanding affordable high-speed internet for all Americans. Tell that to the Vermonters, by the way. Removing all lead pipes ensures clean drinking water in all communities. States and municipalities have been removing lead pipes, lead paint, and lead everything for decades and decades. The job has already been nearly done. This is called you're 50 points ahead in the fucking soccer game, and at the last minute, some dude who nobody even knows the name of, some shrimpy dude, is allowed to score a goal, and then he claims credit for winning the big game. The Biden administration has a habit of doing this sort of thing. Most of these infrastructural plans are pork barrel handouts to get the hundreds of billions of dollars that Biden wanted in the first place. They will be used to slap a coat of paint on a bridge at 10 times the cost that a private individual could do it. It will be pork barrel. Yeah, it'll be 5 dudes standing around watching one dude slowly shovel gravel into the pothole. We've seen this before. We saw it with Shovel Ready, and this is exactly what it is. This is Obama's Shovel Ready, repackaged as a general infrastructure bill, 10 times more expensive, and many of those investments will never see a return. Some of them will fail outright. Worked with the Republicans. Oh my God, it's the evil Nazi GOP again. To make more in America by passing the CHIPS and Science Act, investing in semiconductor manufacturing and other advanced cutting-edge technologies here in America, creating good-paying jobs in manufacturing. That's wonderful. Oh, good-paying jobs. A small number of them, potentially temporary, requisite partially in the semiconductor sense on China not deciding to fuck with Taiwan, an issue on which Biden has been very, very absent, an issue on which he has exacerbated the situation. One shot across the bow over in the middle of Asia, and those semiconductor businesses are going to have to deal with a Chinese monopoly, which will massively increase the price of computing, and China will definitely use this for diplomatic leverage, drawing the Western world deeper into the throes of globalism. Brought together Republicans and Democrats to pass the first meaningful gun safety legislation in nearly 30 years, removing firearms from dangerous individuals, the unconstitutional red flag laws, of course. Expanding mental health services in schools. This is a good idea. The problem is, of course, if you give the schools unilateral money to do something like that, they're going to fritter it away. It's not going to have an impact that you want. It's a good idea. It's just that the government is not capable of actually doing the carry-through. Supporting school safety and narrows the boyfriend loophole to keep guns out of the hands of convicted dating partners. Convicted dating partners. I'm not exactly sure what that actually refers to. What red flag laws in the expanded form really does is allow some random neighbor to bitch about the fact that they think you might be a bad person and for your Second Amendment rights to be violated. It will inevitably end up in a SCOTUS case. It will inevitably end up getting tossed out Bruin style. I look forward to that. For right now, unfortunately, it's the law of the land. But here's the thing. The bill that you're referring to, because these talking points, if someone is actually using them at the Thanksgiving table, like they've printed it out, they've got it on their phone, they're talking to their weird conservative uncle, and they whip out their phone, they're like, I've got a counter to you. Joe Biden has given me ammunition against your evil MAGA Nazism. The problem is they probably think that that bill was badly watered down and they wouldn't use it as a talking point to begin with because it does absolutely nothing about guns in general. It spends some money. It was watered down by Manchin and Romney and Cornyn and others. You stripped out the attempt to ban so-called assault weapons, which makes it less unconstitutional. The problem is that the couple of components that are there that would generally be supported, like expanded mental health care access, taxpayer funded, inconsequential. The schools will misuse those funds. I can guarantee this. They do this all the time with special education. Government feeds them money, money, money. What do? They put the kids in the sped shed. I would know because I was in the sped shed for many years. Despite global challenges, we're making progress. 10 million jobs created, unemployment near record lows. Yet we also had unemployment near record lows under Trump. And you didn't have the inflation problem. Things were going pretty well there for about 3.5 years, by the way. You didn't create the majority of those jobs. Otherwise, you'd be saying that Trump gets credit for creating about 10 million jobs in a much shorter period of time. That's because the lockdowns ended. Those were jobs that were already there. People were on furlough. Businesses were forced to close. And then they opened back up. And because of the supply chain issue, it became more profitable for corporations. Damn right, some of them hired a lot of people, although they're now cutting those jobs too because the lockdown post-boom is now over. Unemployment near record lows, which for some reason they repeat, including for black and Hispanic Americans. Yeah, your weird conservative uncle, probably, if we're going to be hep to the stereotype, is probably white. That talking point will really do wonders, convincing them to bow their head solemnly and admit that Biden's actually a great guy. More small businesses launching than ever before. Again, that's because of a re-competitive business atmosphere that will be crushed by the incoming Great Recession anyway, that was inevitable. And it was already beginning under Trump as lockdowns ended, which were gubernatorial. They had nothing to do with the executive branch. Rallied the world in defense of Ukraine in the face of Putin's aggression. So you're taking credit for warmongering. That's basically what it is. Yeah, hell, you're laundering money through Ukraine right now. Just to be clear, bring up the FTX scandal if your weird liberal relative with the Eat More Kale shirt happens to bring that one up. And no taxes on people making above $400K. He kept his promise. False. You've already raised them. Letting the Trump tax cuts lapse is an automatic tax on anyone with self-employed income, regardless of how much it is, number one. It increases the middle class bracket, number two. It does. Those brackets were lowered, just to be clear. It also restores the SALT write-off, and that's a gift to multimillionaires and billionaires in a handful of blue states, just to be clear. Also, Biden already went back on his word there. He said, well, some people that are making under $400K, they might pay more taxes depending on whether they file as married or not. Okay, so there's another marriage penalty. I remember that being brought up under the Clinton administration for a number of years by my parents. Meanwhile, Republicans in Congress are extreme. Okay, so the same Republicans you just claimed credit for working with and you bragged about it, now you're lambasting them as extreme. Wonder why you put it at the end of your propaganda talking points for Thanksgiving. Eat those candied yams, kids. I think maybe you should just not talk politics at the Thanksgiving table. Maybe you should just give thanks and fucking eat. That's kind of the point of the holiday, just to be clear. Watch a documentary about the Native American genocide made by Michael Moore, proposing a national ban on abortion. Yeah, I oppose that. To be clear, that's basically just Lindsey Graham's idea, though. And the Democrats have stolen the failure on this issue by then issuing their support for a national abortion bill that would expand it Northam style. I hate to tell you, but both of these are considered extreme by the majority of the U.S. public. Although you're right about Lindsey Graham. I don't think most Republicans like him either. Planning to put Medicare and Social Security on the chopping block. I have heard this for decades, my entire lifespan. As far back as I can remember, every election cycle, I've heard the same thing on the news, whether it be CNN, Fox, wherever else. The Republicans want to cut Medicaid. The Republicans want to get rid of Medicare. The Republicans are coming for your Social Security money. The Republicans are basically, they want to kill all of the old people. They want to kill what used to be their main constituency. Now they tend to vote Democrat more, which is funny. Biden's support is highest among the elderly demographic. Maybe because they see him as a compatriot in Alzheimer's. It has never happened. It's always warned about, but it never becomes a thing. Even when Republicans have a House and Senate majority and the presidency. They have the capability, they're not going to do jack shit to it because they know they'd get their asses owned if they did. Trying to raise costs on Americans by repealing the Inflation Reduction Act. The Inflation Reduction Act doesn't lower costs. There's literally no economist that they cited actually agreed with that premise in the first place. You'll remember that. They said, well, so what was it? 40 top economists have said that this will do great things. And then they reached out to some of the economists that were mentioned in passing. None of them knew what the fuck they were talking about. They were never even asked about their opinions. Yeah, President Biden's top accomplishments. Basically, it boils down to saving you money on hearing aids. That happens to be taxpayer funded. So go talk to your weird relative, kids. That's about all. Peace out.